Yes, I was wrong about this game. Mostly. For context, Persona 3 FES is a game I've had a love-hate relationship with for a good 5-something years now. It's always been one of those games where I wanted to love it really badly, but I couldn't. That is until recently. Now, I don't know if I can say I love it, but I can say I appreciate it on a much deeper level than I did before after giving it another honest chance, because admittedly, I've been pretty damn harsh on it here on the channel. In this little retrospective here, I don't want to just compare the game to its remake Persona 3 Reload, since I think that's pretty unfair and disingenuous to do, but I will bring up some things here and there just to illustrate certain points since I know a lot of you out there have only played Reload. With that in mind, the main topics I want to touch on are the story, gameplay, art direction, and music. Spoiler alert, the gameplay segments will be the longest part of this video for reasons that may or may not be obvious. I don't want to yap on too much in this intro here, so let's go ahead and get into the story. I hope you enjoy. I'm not going to go super in detail for the story since my opinions on it haven't changed much over the years, so I just want to touch on my general thoughts. The story of this game is great. Does it have really bad pacing issues at times? Yes, but the calendar system of this game doesn't make the pacing as bad as it would for other games to me. Mostly. I'm not really sure whether to talk about the calendar system and social links in this section, but the gameplay segment is going to be long enough as is, so I'll just talk about them here. Let's focus on the main story first though. The main story itself is good, like I said. The themes of apathy, death, and depression are things that I find very fascinating, since it's something that everyone has to deal with in various ways throughout the course of their lives, and how they implemented all the Greek mythology into the narrative and characters was very well done. There's a reason my character analysis series for this game was like 6 hours long in total. I don't think I'd be able to do that for any other game in the series. I've said it a few times before here on the channel, but I think this game has the best written characters in the series. It's not my favorite cast as a group, but individually they are so well fleshed out. The goal with the characters of this game, according to the director Katsuda Hashino, was to make them feel like real people, separate from you, the player, and I think they did a good job overall in portraying them that way. It really does feel like everyone has their own lives, interests, and personalities, and it makes all the characters distinct from one another. Yukari and Junpei are great examples of what I'm talking about here, where before you get to know either of them at the start of the game, they already have this sort of brother-sister dynamic of getting on each other's nerves, which is mostly one-sided with Yukari finding Junpei to be a nuisance at times. Then there's Akihiko and Mitsuru's friendship with them respecting each other greatly while seeing each other's faults, as shown with Mitsuru scolding Akihiko for his one-track mindset at the start of the game. Then there's the fact that you and your main cast of characters are living in the same dorm together, so sometimes someone won't be around since they're out doing things on their own time, and if they are around, it's like a nice surprise of, oh, my favorite character is here today to greet me, sweet! You can then talk to them and see how they feel about things going on in the story, or to simply talk about random nonsense that might be on their mind. It's not the most intricate system ever, but it made the friendships and bonds the cast made with each other and yourself feel genuine, which is impressive since this was their first real attempt at the social sim gameplay loop. Realistically, if you played, beat, and enjoyed this game, it was most likely because of the main cast of characters more so than anything else. This isn't to say there's nothing else to like about it, since there are things like social links after all. But with a JRPG this long, you're in it for the long haul with the characters if you stick around to the end, unless it's something like SMT where the gameplay can carry even bad stories. The biggest problem about the story and characters to me is the main antagonists and villains you go against. I'm gonna be honest, I think Persona 3 has some of the least interesting villains I have ever seen in a game. I don't want to go into spoilers because that'll make the video way longer than it needs to be, but the problem with the villains in this game is that they are so shittily developed. You barely see them whatsoever, and when you do, they don't feel like threats, or they're largely overshadowed. This becomes extremely apparent near the end of the game, where shit hits the fan all at once. A lot of times it feels like you're aimlessly playing with no real objective or threat in mind besides the one you're given at the very start of the game, which can get stale pretty quick. Thankfully, the majority of the characters themselves are good enough for you to want to keep playing, at least in my opinion, which of course gives me a reason to segue into the biggest change of Persona 3, the social link system. Let's point out the elephant in the room. The guys of FES don't have social links, which I think inherently makes them less fleshed out than the girls of the group. They're still good characters, of course, but I think it's really weird for the game about bonds and friendship being your inner strength to not let you become better friends with your guy best friends. I tried looking for a developer explanation on this decision and couldn't find anything, so honestly, I have no idea what the thought process was because it makes no sense. There's really no reason they couldn't do it. The lack of social links for the guys becomes very apparent with characters like Akihiko, Shinji, and Ken in the later half of the game. After October or so in the game, where their character arcs are more or less completed, it feels like they hardly exist in the story anymore. Again, I don't want to compare the game to Reload too much, but this was one of the major things they fixed in that remake. The linked episodes gave them a social link equivalent, which just so happened to help the 3 characters I mentioned the most. The only guy character I can say I felt was really well written without a social link was Junpei, since he's by far the most fleshed out of the guys of Cease. With all of this said though, there is another elephant we have to address with the girls in particular. In this game, you are required to romance every single girl's social link you do. Now I did actually find a developer explanation on this decision, thankfully. In a developer interview with Hashino and Shigenori Sojima, they said they have never forged a true platonic friendship with a girl in their lives. Because of this, they only put romances in there because they didn't know how to be friends with girls. While this is pretty damn funny, let's be honest, it's yet again ironic that a game about friendship and bonds requires you to break one of the biggest rules about being in an intimate relationship. Be faithful. Since you literally have to cheat on every girl, it almost makes you not want to do half the social links in this game because you're gonna have to cheat on a girl, which I think goes against the point of what Persona is trying to achieve. Even Sojima himself said he only completed one girl's social link in this game due to this existing, so I guess maybe it was a deliberate decision. After all, there are mechanics like the jealousy, reverse, and break mechanics to keep you from wanting to do that. On the other hand, Hashino said he did them all anyway, so honestly, who knows at the end of the day. Speaking of these mechanics, I actually think these should come back in future games. I'm sure a lot of you will cringe at the idea of that, but seriously, I think if you get caught cheating in Persona 6, your social link with the girl should just break. Why the fuck would they ever forgive you for cheating on them? If there's one thing I will defend about this game, it is the reverse and break mechanics. In a social sim game where bonds are your strength, if you say or do something that offends or hurts your friend, then you should see some sort of repercussions for that, especially if you cheat on every single girl in the game. Given actual deterrence from cheating on the girls, because as it stands right now, the romance mechanic as a whole is shallow at best. I think even the jealousy mechanic should stay as long as they implement it only for people who go for the harem route. For those unaware, the jealousy mechanic made it so if one of your girl's social links you were high rank with saw you hanging out with another girl, they would get mad at you and the social link would reverse or break. It's annoying as hell in this game because you have to romance every girl, but if they made it only activate on girls you've romanced in, say, Persona 6, then that solves the problem. In fact, I think this would make for an interesting gameplay mechanic. I can see it now. How I beat Persona 6 while cheating on everyone. Now that would actually be some fun shit to do. Now, I'm sure me saying that probably sounds very contradictory, but the thing is, if you want to do the harem route, I don't really have a problem with it because I literally do it every single game I play, but there should be some sort of deterrence from doing it. At the very least, it would make the romance aspect of these games something you have to think about for more than 2 seconds at the end of the social links, because as it stands, it's just so ass, bro. I hate the romance aspect if it wasn't obvious. Okay, I think I've had my fair share of talking about cheating on girls today, so let's go back to the topic of pacing for a second since this goes along with the social links. People criticize Persona 3 a lot for the pacing issues, and I would agree as I said at the start of this section, but I think one big reason for the pacing being bad that people don't talk about is that there's nothing to do at nighttime in this game. There are 2 social links at nighttime, Tanaka and Mutatsu, and that's basically all you do at nighttime in this game. You talk to them. When you're not talking to them, your raising social stats or going to Tartarus. But once you eventually get the social stats done near the end of the game, you have nothing to do at nighttime anymore. Sure, the main story itself has iffy pacing, but I think this is probably the worst part about it. The calendar system is a good way for them to fill in the filler moments of the story. I mean, shit, the calendar system is why these filler gaps exist in the first place. It's to give you time to do the social links. But there's nothing to do at nighttime. You have 2 social links. So for 50% of the game, you're doing nothing. They front-loaded everything to be daytime and didn't put nearly enough focus into the nighttime segment of the game. And then on top of that, during the summer vacation of the game, all of your social links with your classmates become unavailable. Even though you're doing nothing for half the day in this game, you feel so strapped for time because you really don't have anywhere near enough time to do all the social links you want to do. I don't want to say it's outright bad game design because I don't feel qualified enough to say that, but it really is bizarre as to why there is just no thought put into the evening segments of this game. Did they really think it would take people that many Tartarus trips to get things done before each full moon? Because that's the only explanation that makes any sort of sense to me. Either way, it makes the pacing bad and it is what it is, I guess. On a more positive note, it was a great baseline for the games going forward to build upon. Persona 4 and 5 did a pretty good job in balancing out the night and daytime social links, so if nothing else, they learned from their mistakes and fixed them, so I can't be too mad. I mean shit, even Reload, while still having many of the same problems, did fix this somewhat. You got the gardening, linked episodes, hangout events, and you can explore more of the town. It's still inferior to Persona 4 and 5, but even Atlus knew this was a shortcoming of the game's design, which is why I wanted to mention it. To sum everything up here, the social links in this game across the board are a little bit strange to me. You have good ones, bad ones, ones that don't exist that should, and ones that turn you into a cheating scumbag against your control. For better or worse, it's definitely diverse, so that's gotta count for something. The story and characters are good with a few big problems that hold it back, but all in all, I can say it's still the same Persona 3 I knew and loved. Like I said, I never hated the story or social links, except a few, so I'll give Persona 3 FES props in these regards. But of course, the story and whatnot are only one piece of the puzzle. This is a video game, meaning you have to play it. I know that's crazy, right? And that's where my problems with this game always resided. The biggest goal of this video was to see if I could finally come to appreciate this game's gameplay loop. So was I able to do that? Well, it's a little bit complicated, and there is a lot to talk about with it, so let's buckle up and get down to it. I'm not sure where to even begin, so let's just start with the most obvious thing about this game's gameplay: the tactics system. The tactics system in this game is how you control your party members. You don't choose the actions for them, but you give them a command to try and lead them in the right direction. If you want them to heal, you put them on heal support. You want them to attack someone, you assign a target, so on and so forth. Again, the reasoning behind this decision was to make your party members feel separate from you, so I understand where they're coming from with this decision. Some love it, some hate it, but for me in particular, every single time I've talked about this system in videos, it has been with negative connotations. It really is one of the most divisive mechanics I've ever seen in a game, but for this revisit in particular, I wanted to put aside my biases and really try to dig my heels into this mechanic to give it an honest shot once again. So did my opinion on it change? Well, to be honest, yeah, it did. It really isn't as bad as I remember it being. In fact, I can say to at least a certain degree I like the tactics system now. It almost feels like solving a puzzle every single fight you go into. You have to take into account the turn order with your own team and the enemies, what options item or persona wise you have to cover options your party members can't do, what skills or level your party are at. It's honestly a fun system. I was shocked at how much I enjoyed it after a while, and I think the reason I had such a bad taste in my mouth with this system is because of the early game. The early game isn't necessarily bad or even too terribly difficult, but when you only have Junpei and Yukari on your team and you have such limited options for skills, that's when the tactics system is at its worst. The second Akihiko joins though, it's pretty damn good from that point onward. Once you get a full team, you have some items and equipment, and you can get into the groove of fusing personas on your pro tag, that's when it shines. So I must have had this deep disdain for the tactics from the early game mostly. Then again, my taste in games has just changed a lot and I've been more open-minded toward things like this, so maybe I straight up wasn't ready or willing to accept the mechanic for what it was, especially since I did start with Persona 5, went on to Persona 4, and then went to Persona 3 FES. Now obviously this mechanic isn't perfect. As I mentioned, it is like solving a puzzle piece, but sometimes solving that puzzle piece is really fucking annoying because it can be a genuinely debilitating feature at times where it does more harm than good. A really good example of this is trying to get your party members to do debuffs and buffs. From my understanding, the only way to get them to do this is to put them onto heal support. But the problem here is if anyone on the party has lost like no joke 15% of their health, they tend to focus on healing rather than doing the buffs or debuffs. Let me give a scenario to illustrate why exactly this can be such a bad thing for the AI to do. You're facing a Guardian Shadow and you or your team are a little bit low on health. Getting your defense up and the enemy's attack down is almost always going to be the ideal situation for minimizing damage taken in the long run. But if one or both of these actions are skipped in favor of healing, you and everyone else are going to take more damage after everything is said and done, even if you were healed to full health. I've noticed many situations like this in the early to mid point of the game, since Yukari and Akihiko both have single target healing skills, so they're going to focus on healing over anything else. Stuff like this isn't a big deal when you're just roaming around Tartarus, but in boss fights or Guardian fights, it can be the difference between winning and losing the fight. Sometimes it feels like the tactics make you play in a more streamlined way, which is ironic since that's the opposite of what it's meant to do. Basically, the main issue with tactics, in my opinion, is that it's really bad if you're trying to make decisions that will benefit you in the long run rather than the here and now. The AI can't understand the context and nuance of a situation where someone might not care if a party member dies if it lets them set something up. Really, the AI are the only reason this game feels so difficult at times, and I can say that with full confidence because Persona 3 Portable is virtually the same game, but it has controllable party members, and it's significantly easier. Other than that, my only other complaint is how you unlock the tactics themselves. You see, you don't start with all the tactics by default, you unlock them as you progress further into the story. As an example, you unlock the Conserve SP tactic after completing the first full moon operation. Some of them aren't a big deal, but why do I have to wait until the 5th full moon operation to unlock a tactic that simply makes the party members attack downed enemies? Sure, there are ways to get around it, like using a signed target in its place, but at that point, why even have the downed enemies tactic in the game? A lot of tactics kind of feel mundane or redundant in this game, and I found myself using the basic tactics you have over the other ones. I guess this isn't too big a deal, since you'd rather have the good ones first rather than be forced to wait for them. But when half the options feel unnecessary, I feel like it kills some of the depth the mechanic could have had. With all of this said, it's still a much better system than I gave it credit for all these years. So even though I do have really big issues with it, I can now say I like the tactics system. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would say that. But you want to know something I still don't like? The fatigue system.
I'm getting kind of tired. This is not good. Takiba is fatigued.
Dear God, the fatigue system is terrible. I think I found what my actual gripe with this game was all this time in this revisit. It wasn't the damn tactics, it was this. This is what makes the early game to mid game so unbearable. Late game, it doesn't matter at all, it might as well not even exist. But when half the game or so forces you to deal with this, it's a pain in the fucking ass. If you don't know what the fatigue mechanic is, after being in Tartarus doing battles for a bit, you and your party members will become tired, and once that happens, their accuracy becomes lower, they take more damage, and they deal less damage. Honestly, I wouldn't mind this mechanic if it was just that. But the worst part is that if someone is tired, when you return to the Tartarus entrance, they just leave the dungeon for the day and you can't use them anymore. Like, what? I understand they wanted the game to be more immersive and whatnot, but when it comes to the actual gameplay side of things, this really is one of the least fun things I have ever dealt with in a game, and this is how I feel about it after the revisit. The way tiredness is calculated is based on the character's level, I'm pretty sure. The lower the level, the faster you get fatigued. And once again, I understand the developer's intention behind this. They wanted it to feel more realistic and immersive. Cause yeah, you would get fatigued the less experienced you are, that makes sense. But it's just not fun. Every time I go to Tartarus in the early to mid game in this game, I have this constant anxiety about getting into any battle, because basically if anyone gets tired, you're probably fucked for the bosses. You might think to just avoid as many battles as you can to circumvent this issue, which you certainly can do if you want to be under-leveled for every single fight in the game. There are some glitches and exploits you can use to avoid the tired mechanic, which ironically makes the game a lot less annoying, but for the sake of discussing the mechanic on its own merit, there's really no reason to bring that up. There really isn't much more to talk about with this mechanic, but oh my god, I hate it so bad. If you're someone who likes this mechanic, please comment and let me know why, because I just don't get it. I do want to give this game some more props though, instead of harping on the tired mechanic. So let me segue into one thing I really didn't think I would enjoy as much as I did going back. The one more and knockdown system. This works mostly the same as the other Persona games that came after, but with a couple key differences. The main one is that getting up actually uses the action for that turn for both yourself and the enemies. At first, I didn't see much difference in how this could affect the gameplay in comparison to something like Persona 4, which removed it. But after replaying it for this video, it straight up might be my favorite thing about the entire gameplay loop. It's such a volatile mechanic at times where if you know what you're doing, you can straight up stunlock and abuse the mechanic in your favor. For the Emperor and Empress boss, for example, I hard targeted the Empress, and once she was dead, I abused the knockdown system to stunlock the Emperor until he died. It was no joke like 12 turns of me hitting the weakness, putting up a buff, a debuff, and then attacking once they got up. I barely even needed the party members, I beat them with the protagonist alone basically, which is a strategy that would only work because of how one more and knockdowns work in this game. It really is insane to me how much more technical the game got once I started using this more consciously. Like I said, it's very volatile, but when you do use it to your advantage, it's so satisfying. I think the tactics and all that are the main things I wanted to talk about with the gameplay, but there are a few smaller things I want to touch on as well. Let's talk about the weapon swapping on the protagonist. A few months back or so, I asked people on Twitter why they liked the weapon swapping, and some things I saw were the animations, the effects they give you, and basically just the general versatility it gives you. I tried to see where people were coming from, and I can see why people would like it and care for it, but it kind of felt strange to me. Certain weapons in the overworld feel borderline unusable because of how slow they are. You'd think the bow would be a great weapon choice for getting player advantage on the shadows, but it really isn't because the arrows go maybe 2 feet ahead of you before disappearing, and it's just slow as hell. All the weapons bar a few feel so damn slow, so even if I had a weapon that was better, I would still use something that was better for the overworld like the one-handed sword. This ironically would become an issue in Metaphor ReFantazio as well. It's a cool mechanic, but it's something where whether it was there or not, I wouldn't care either way, which is why I wasn't too sad about it being absent from Persona 3 Reload. Speaking of equipment, it's also kind of a pain in the ass to change equipment on all the party members. You can only change your own equipment in the equip menu in this game, so you have to manually talk to everyone and change their gear one by one, which wouldn't be a big deal if you didn't have upwards of 10 damn party members or something to adjust. Oh, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to mention this, but leveling up all your characters equally is like impossible in this game. There isn't any share XP in this game, and nothing like the clocks in Reload exist, so you're kind of just forced to keep one team rotation. I'll probably never use Junpei on this save file again because he's so damn far behind at this point, it's not even worth trying to get him caught up. I think this is one of the biggest issues with the game. The last thing I'll mention here for the gameplay is Tartarus itself. You might be surprised that I didn't make this a bigger section, but there's really not that much to talk about. It's a pretty bland and repetitive dungeon, but it's not the worst thing ever if you enjoy the combat at least a little bit. If you asked me before this video how I felt about it, I would have told you it's at least the 3rd worst dungeon in the entire series. And it probably is, but I don't hate it as much as I used to. I don't hate it, I don't love it, it's just average like 90% of Persona dungeons before Persona 5, so, you know. Unsurprisingly, this section of the video was long as hell, but honestly y'all, I'm genuinely shocked by how much my opinions on the gameplay changed after doing this revisit. If I'm being real, I thought I was going to have another P5X-esque rant ready to go, but nah, I really do like this gameplay loop in a lot of ways now. The tactics are pretty cool, the mechanics in general are fun, and while I do have big issues with stuff like the fatigue mechanic and tactics at times, it's at least something you can navigate around. With all of this said, would I choose this game's design over the games that came after? So would I prefer tactics over direct commands? No, I wouldn't, but I think it's a solid gameplay loop and I can now appreciate it more than I did before. It provides a certain gameplay loop and niche that no other Persona game can provide, which gives it a unique identity and it gives it a reason to still exist even with Reload and Portable being in the equation. I'm genuinely glad I could find some enjoyment and appreciation for this game's gameplay, because I never thought I would come around to it. Since this video is probably about, 20-30 minutes long at this point, I'm gonna merge the music and art direction topics into one. The art direction and music is something I don't feel is bad comparing to Reload, since I think this is a fair comparison to make, so I'll do that a good bit here. Even as someone who loves Reload a lot, like I probably still prefer Reload over FES, I've always thought that the general presentation of the game was better in FES. The music, sound design, and atmosphere is really damn good in FES. Even on my first playthrough of Reload, I noticed certain things I liked about FES that were absent or different. Like the evoker sound effect is so much better in FES, it's not even funny.
This is my cue. Give up! Initiating summon sequence.
And I like a lot of the animations a little bit more as well. All the sound effects and music in this game have this certain impact that Reload just doesn't have. I've used this example in previous videos, but the final boss of the answer shows what I mean super well. I'm gonna let a small snippet of both play here so you can try and hear the difference yourself. While the composition itself is similar, the FES version has this grunginess that almost makes it feel like a heartbeat in the bass, but the Reload version is way more flat. This is how a lot of Reload remixes are, for better or worse. Not every remix is bad. In fact, I don't think really any of them are just straight up bad. But for the most part, I do prefer the FES soundtrack as a whole. The main place Reload has the advantage is with the completely new songs like Don't, Color Your Night, and It's Going Down Now, because these are undoubtedly some of the best songs in the entire series. In terms of visual presentation, this one I'm a bit more 50-50 on, but I still lean toward liking FES a bit more in this regard as well. I really love the portraits and art made for this game, especially how the text box portraits are half body instead of being a bust up. It's not like Reload's portraits are bad, in fact I think they're great, but it does allow the characters to be a bit more expressive with the half body models. Yukari's portraits are a great example of this, where her body language does a lot in conveying her mood. I'm not trying to say either game is objectively better in any regard I've been talking about, but PS2 to PSP era Persona had this sort of grittiness that was neutered in later releases. Both Persona 4 Golden and Persona 3 Reload take away certain aspects of the atmosphere that the games were initially based around. I don't actually have a problem with this inherently. In fact, I think it's a fine idea to explore different atmospheres and styles for games in later releases, but where my problems reside are with how poorly preserved these games are. I really wouldn't be shocked if we never see a port for Persona 3 FES, because in Atlus's eyes, we don't need it to exist anymore. Oh, they have Portable already, they don't need FES, and now we have Reload, they definitely don't need FES and we don't need to preserve it, who cares? The same thing happened with PS2 Persona 4, and it's just a shame. These games are what made Atlus who they are, and they just don't care about them. Don't get me wrong, Reload, the ports of Golden and Portable, these are cool. But the original games like FES and Persona 4 PS2, they just don't care. Even if you're someone who hated FES like I did all these years, you can't deny that being forced to buy a scalped copy of it from resellers or sail the 7 seas to play a game this beloved is a bad precedent for the gaming industry as a whole. I'm going off on a whole different tangent at this point though, so I apologize for that. But really, I think both FES and Reload's approach to the atmosphere are valid, even if I do prefer one over the other. This topic is kind of a beaten horse at this point, so I'm gonna leave it there for now. I think both Reload and FES are good, but I do prefer FES in a lot of ways. So with everything said and done, it's time to give my quick summary of everything after this retrospective. As I've reiterated several times throughout this video, I am pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed myself going through this game again. I still can't believe I came around to the tactics system. I know it might be getting annoying hearing me say that over and over again, but I really never thought I would like this mechanic. After all these years, I can finally say that I like Persona 3 FES. I always liked it in some ways, but now I can actually say it's a good game instead of saying, it's good, but it's not for me. Which is a nice feeling considering I don't want to hate any game in particular. Unless it's P5X. If you enjoyed this retrospective here, please consider dropping a like and a sub, and feel free to comment down below what game you'd like to see me do next. I can't guarantee I can do every game, but I'll try to do the ones with the most upvotes. And also, it doesn't have to be Persona, but I'm sure Persona is going to be the most upvoted, so, you know. And of course, I gotta give y'all your free cookie on the house for sticking around to the end. Here you go, homie. You are truly a real one. That's all I gotta say for today. It's been your boy Yandere Gogeta, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out, everybody, and have a great day.